In more than 3 centuries of Spanish occupation, the Philippines saw a number of rebellions that were unsuccessful in attaining independence. But in 1896, the struggle of the Katipunan, or the KKK in the Philippines, would be the final attempt that would eventually gain independence from Spain. However, the events leading up to it would be filled with courage, determination, and heroism, but also chaos, selfishness, and betrayal. This is the tragedy of the Philippine Revolution. Spain had a huge empire, including the Philippines, which they ruled for 333 years. But with colonization came oppression. The Spanish exploited the country's resources and forced the indigenous population into hard labor while imposing high taxes. They also tightly controlled the people and suppressed any political dissent. The Spanish tried to suppress local culture, banned native languages, imposed Christianity, and discouraged traditional practices. This treatment understandably made the Filipinos unhappy, and they resisted Spanish rule through various revolts throughout the years, such as the Dagohoy Revolt and Silang Revolt, to name a few. But the last attempt at independence from the Spaniards came during the Philippine Revolution of 1896 to 1898. In 1892, Andres Bonifacio founded the Katipunan, also known as the Kataas-Taasang Kagalang-Galangang Katipunan ng mga Anak ng Bayan, or the KKK. It was a secret society that aimed to overthrow the Spaniards and establish a Philippine government. The members of the Katipunan were composed of mainly working-class Filipinos who were tired of the poverty and oppression that marked Spanish colonial rule, and they were driven by a burning desire for freedom, equality, and justice. The Katipunan was a daring response to the growing sense of nationalism among Filipino people. It was a call to arms, a rallying cry for all those who dared to dream of a better future for their country. The organization grew quickly, and by 1896, it had become a powerful force that posed a significant threat to the Spanish colonial forces. The Katipunan made its grand entrance in the Battle of San Juan del Monte on August 30, 1896, officially beginning the bloody and violent Philippine Revolution. The battle was a response to the Spanish authorities' discovery of the Katipunan's plans for an uprising. In the days leading up to the battle, Spanish forces arrested several of the society's prominent members, leaving the Katipunan with no choice but to launch an attack on the Spanish forces in the area. However, the odds were not in the Katipunan's favor. The Spanish authorities had a well-equipped and well-trained army, while the Katipunan was composed mainly of untrained volunteers armed with only basic weapons. Moreover, the Katipunan lacked coordination and planning, leaving them at a severe disadvantage. Eventually, the Katipunan suffered heavy losses and lost its first battle. Soon, news of the resistance spread to the Spanish government in Spain. They knew they had to act fast to quell the rebellion in their colony, so they sent reinforcements and additional resources to the Philippines. The Spanish government was determined to crush the rebellion and restore its authority in the colony. But the Spanish response was not limited to just sending reinforcements. They also unleashed a brutal crackdown on the resistance, with several prominent members of the Philippine Revolution executed in a bid to intimidate and discourage further resistance. Among the people was Jose Rizal, a key figure in the propaganda movement and a symbol of hope for the people even before. With the Spanish military regaining strength, the odds were stacked against the Katipunan. The lack of resources and support for the resistance meant that the battles that followed would be marked by even more significant losses and casualties for the Katipunan. As the battles raged on, a particularly charismatic leader was gaining popularity and quickly rose through the ranks of the Katipunan. Despite being outmatched in terms of manpower and resources, Emilio Aguinaldo was able to lead the Katipunan to several important victories in Cavite, his hometown. He was a skilled military strategist and tactician, and his leadership in battle inspired others to follow him. Aguinaldo was also politically savvy and was able to navigate the complex political landscape of the Philippines. He was able to forge alliances and gain the support of other groups. Despite fighting with the Katipunan, the leaders in Cavite, along with Emilio Aguinaldo, formed their own faction of the Katipunan, called Magdalo. The Katipunan leaders also formed their own faction, called the Magdiwang, which is closely associated with Andres Bonifacio himself, the founder of the Katipunan. The Magdalo faction, composed of the wealthy and educated, had a more moderate stance towards politics and was open to negotiations with the Spanish colonial authorities. They believed that the Katipunan needed to focus on establishing a new government and gaining political power. Meanwhile, the Magdiwang faction, consisting of members from the lower social classes, was determined to continue the armed struggle against the Spanish. This division within the Katipunan was rooted in differences in leadership style, political ideology, and personal ambition, and made it more difficult to achieve their goal of independence. To reorganize the Katipunan into a more formal and centralized organization, Andres Bonifacio, Emilio Aguinaldo, and members of both the Magdalo and Magdiwang factions held a meeting in Cavite to once and for all elect the new leaders of the Katipunan. This meeting was infamously known as the Tejeros Convention of 1897. At the convention, however, Andres Bonifacio was not elected as the new head of the revolutionary government. Instead, Emilio Aguinaldo was elected as the new president. Bonifacio argued that he, as the founder of the Katipunan, should be the one to lead the new government. But Aguinaldo, with his impressive military record and popularity, won out in the end. It was suggested that Bonifacio should instead automatically have the position of vice president. However, the election continued and Mariano Trias took the position of vice president. As the elections continued, Andres Bonifacio was elected last as the Director of Interior, but was then challenged by Daniel Tirona, who argued that he was not qualified for the position due to his lack of formal education, and that the position should be held by someone who holds a lawyer's diploma. Bonifacio did not have a high level of formal education. He was born into a poor family and was only able to attend school for a few years. Tirona proposed a prominent lawyer like Jose del Rosario instead. Bonifacio was insulted by this and asked for an apology from Tirona, but Tirona refused to apologize, and in a fit of anger, Bonifacio drew his gun and threatened to shoot him. The room erupted into chaos as Bonifacio's fellow revolutionaries tried to restrain him. Bonifacio felt cheated by the election results, and he believed that the Katipunan he had founded was taken over by people who cared more about their own power than the cause of the revolution. He then stormed out of the convention feeling angry and betrayed. By April of 1897, Emilio Aguinaldo, as the new president, ordered Bonifacio's arrest, accusing him of burning a village. Additionally, Bonifacio and his last remaining followers were seen as a threat to Aguinaldo's leadership and authority, and some were killed during his arrest, including his brother Ciriaco. It was a shocking move that sent shockwaves through the Katipunan forces. Bonifacio, the hero of the revolution, was now a prisoner. After his arrest, Bonifacio was charged with treason and sedition, and his fate was left in the hands of a jury made up entirely of Aguinaldo's men. The trial was a sham, with even Bonifacio's own lawyer declaring him guilty. Bonifacio and his brother Procopio were then sentenced to death and were executed in the mountains of Maragondon. The news of his execution and possible betrayal by Aguinaldo demoralized many Katipunan troops, causing them to quit, even more weakening the Katipunan forces. These issues all happened in the midst of the Philippine Revolution in 1897, as the Katipunan troops struggled to fight the Spaniards, but the revolution would continue on without Bonifacio. As the Spanish troops continued to occupy the Philippines, the Filipino struggle for independence seemed hopeless. However, a new problem arises for Spain. As war broke out between the United States and Spain in 1898, Admiral George Dewey of the United States quickly destroyed the Spanish fleet and secured control of the islands. The war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris that same year, which resulted in Spain losing all its remaining overseas territories, including the Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. The Spaniards had no choice but to withdraw from the Philippines. The Philippine Revolution officially ended on June 12, 1898, with the proclamation of Philippine independence from Spain. However, as the Filipinos celebrated their freedom from Spanish rule, they soon realized that they had simply been handed to a new colonial power, the United States. While the Katipunan did not ultimately cause the surrender of Spain in the Philippines, their efforts significantly weakened the Spanish troops, making it easier for the Americans to take control. Despite the tragedy of the Katipunan, its legacy lived on as an important symbol of independence and a key moment in Philippine history. Check out more tidbits about Philippine history on the Shorts playlist here.